Hi everybody, hope you're having a good day. My film this week is a little bit different. It's an interview with Franchesco from Vert.Run, interviewing me about how to start trail running, training for trails if you don't live near the hills, the best cross training you could do, enjoying races and adventures, coming back to running after having an injury or a baby. So there are lots of great tips and bits of advice in this episode. But if you want more, there's always my book, the Ultimate Trail Running Handbook, with loads more advice on gear, nutrition, injury, route planning and training plans from 5k to 50k. So this interview is also available as a podcast, both from Wild Ginger Running and on Vert.Run's new podcast, Running Long. So do check out their podcast for tons more fantastic advice from awesome athletes like Ruth Croft, Lucy Bartholomew, Tom Evans and Pascal Egley. So enjoy this episode, subscribe to my YouTube channel and or my podcast, and stay tuned for more trail and ultra running advice and inspiration from Wild Ginger Running.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back or welcome to Running Long, the podcast brought to you by Vert.Run. I'm Franchesco, your host, and today's podcast is dedicated to people who are new to the sport and want to approach trail running for their first time. So maybe you've been running on the roads for a while. Maybe you ran track and field during high school or middle school. Then you stopped running for a few years and now you want to restart. Maybe you're a hiker and you want to discover a new way of moving through the mountains. Or maybe you're just interested in starting trail running. Well, today's episode is for you. Today, I'm joined by Claire Martex, founder of Wild Ginger Running, to talk about how to start trail running. So just to give Claire a brief introduction, Claire is a co-founder and former editor of Trail Running Magazine, UK's first magazine dedicated to trail running. Then she created Wild Ginger Running YouTube channel in 2017 to help trail and ultra runners get advice and inspiration regarding training, racing, gear, nutrition, and more. She has a website, Wild Ginger Running, where she shares all her content, articles, videos, and podcasts. She's also published a book, the Ultimate Trail Running Handbook, which we'll talk about. And she organizes training camps for runners of all levels in the Peak Districts in the UK. So please welcome Claire.
Hello, you made me sound like really prolific and busy. I'm just like, oh, did I used to do all that?
Yeah, you do a lot of things. It's exciting.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on, Franchesco. It's really great to be here, and welcome to everybody who is thinking of starting trail running. It's a fantastic, exciting, adventurous new time for you.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. First of all, I'd like to start asking you, how are you? Because I know you've recently given birth to a child, and you're coming back to running. So I feel it's a good time for an interview with you to share with people some good information and tip about how to start or even restart trail running.
Yeah, thank you for asking. Yes, I am fine. I'm just Finley was 1 years old 2 weeks ago. So yes, kind of recently that I gave birth, recently compared to the rest of my life, I suppose. And yeah, it's been a rocky road back to running since he was born. It took me a while to recover. The pelvic floor took a while to recover. So it took about 4 months before I was able to run again without, well, not to put too fine a point on it, being myself, to be honest. So I know a lot of women will understand what I mean. And then after about 4 months, I was able to just build up again slowly. But then once he started nursery at 9 months old, which was about October time, he just started to bring home cold after cold. And I don't know if you can tell from my voice, but I'm still a bit croaky from this 2-week cold. On his birthday, he gave me a cold for 2 weeks. So it's really hard to be consistent with my training, because I'll have a really good spell, like, a couple of weeks without a cold, and I'll run, I'll go to running club, I'll do a long steady at the weekend, and I'll have a great time. I'll post loads on Instagram, test loads of gear out, and then I'll be back to square one, can't do any running for 2 weeks because I've got a stupid cold again. So that's where I am right now, and just recovering from a cold. So I'm just debating. I think I'll be able to go for a run this weekend, but it's just so hard to be consistent with a kid. And if you haven't got a cold, then you know, there's other stuff going on, like you haven't slept because they've kept you awake, or they've woken up really early, or there's just always either really tired or ill. So it's not the best, but yeah, I'm sure it'll get better as he gets older. There you go.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. We'll definitely talk a little more about it, but let's start from the beginning. So the core of our topic is how to start trail running, and just help people discover this beautiful sport that is trail running, and hopefully share some good information and tips to how to start trail running. So running, especially on trails, can feel maybe a little bit intimidating, like especially looking at how crazy some people are with races and such long distances and doing crazy efforts. But here, like, we want to make trail running accessible to everyone, and this is one of our main goals with Vert. So like, give some helpful information to approach trail running in a safe and sustainable way is definitely one of our priorities. And for sure, I must remember that, for example, I'm a professional athlete now, but we all started somewhere, and nobody is born running. So like, it's important to understand that like, we weren't born running, and you know, even with something simple, it's important to start somewhere. So first, I would like to ask you, what's your experience with running, and what do you think has really helped you when you started running?
Oh, that's a really great question. That's such a great question, because I actually said at the start of my book, I said I used to be phobic of running. I used to hate running. I was forced to do running at school because I was, you know, I was a nice kid and I was quite sporty. I did hiking, and, you know, I was, you know, I wasn't like really unfit or anything, but because I was nice, the teachers used to like make me do all the stuff that the other kids didn't want to do, like the 800 meters, the 500 meters, all the really long stuff that was no one liked when you're that age. And so to me, running was this horrible thing that you had to kind of do once or twice a year and dread for the whole year. And it was either freezing cold or boiling hot, around a track or in some park, where once I jumped over a small river and put my hand in dog poo and everybody ran away from me. And I used to go bright red because I'm ginger, I'm very pale. When I put an effort in, I go bright red. All the boys used to point at me and laugh and go, "Oh, Claire Maxted's gone red already." And when you're 15, you kind of like, you can't really deal with that as well as you would these days. So I became absolutely phobic of running. I hated it. I used to get panics thinking, oh my God, I've got to run today. And so when I went to university, I drank a bit too much beer, and I realized that I needed to do a bit more exercise. So the quickest way to fit exercise into the day, because I like to do like loads of stuff, was to go for a run. So it was the quickest way to burn the most calories. So I started running at uni for purely like aesthetic reasons. And because I did a lot of hiking and mountain walking, I immediately, like, rather than running along the pavements, which I did start to do, I immediately just started to bob off into the woods or around the park or along canal towpaths. And apparently that's called trail running. So I think I was naturally just drawn to the off-road side of things, and naturally just eased myself into that. And then when I started work on a magazine called Trail, which is a hiking magazine here in the UK, and then I founded Trail Running magazine, and I didn't do much running at that point, but I did used to try. I used to try doing these runs. I started off doing the Lakeland Trails, which are these amazing races in the Lake District, and this was back in the day, like 2010, and there wasn't the huge number of trail races that there is now. And I used to go along to those and I'd do the 9 or 10 mile run, and it's really easy because I wasn't racing, like I wasn't an elite athlete or anything, but the course was all waymarked and you were doing it with loads of other other people. It was really safe. There was drinks and some snacks on the way around, so you didn't have to carry much. And it was just a really good introduction into trail running. Nice low-level trails put on by a really good race company. So that's where I started running and then trail running. And since then, I've done loads of stuff, and it's been really fun, taking me all over the world. So it's fantastic. And I think the thing that helped me was realizing that running wasn't something that you need to always be really competitive about, going really fast, trying to beat everybody or even yourself. You just need to go and explore and have a good time. And once I realized that, and that I could slow down and not go the pace that you go at school, that you think running is, actually running is like jogging, really. I think they should probably call it trail jogging, and that would be less daunting, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like, I mean, a lot of people have this like traumatic experience with running. For example, at school, where when the teacher makes you run the 800 meters or the mile or whatever, and like as a kid you hate it,
not pleasant, is
and
it?
then
they're shouting at you from the sideline, and you're wearing like completely inappropriate kit for the weather. You've not trained for these things. You've just turned up on sports day and been told to do that, and it's horrible. And you know, people laugh at you if you're not good, and you always like feel like all the adrenaline, and you get that blood taste in your mouth if it's cold. And you're running as hard as you can. You think like that's running, and that's not what running's all about. Like, you can do that kind of running if you want, but that isn't what trail running needs to be.
Yeah, maybe it's not the first experience that many people have with running. So a lot of times it usually ends up to be a pretty tough or even bad experience. So the relationship with running for a lot of people is doesn't start in the best way. But here we're here to help people really develop a good relationship with running and exercising. So what do you think are the things that really help when you start trail running? What is the best training tips that you would give to someone who is getting started with trail running?
Oh, yeah. So I think a lot of people, they don't realize they're already trail runners for the first thing. So you might think, oh, this is a completely new thing. It's probably not. You've probably run round a park before. You've probably run on a canal towpath before. Basically, trail running is not necessarily in these huge mountains doing these epic things, you know, like you see like Salomon TV or Kilian Jornet and Emily Forsberg going off and doing these crazy things. So it's not necessarily that. You're probably already a trail runner, but you don't know it. Like, even if your park run goes a bit off-road, anything that's not on like tarmac is trail running, basically. It bridges the gap between like fell running, mountain running, and road running. So first of all, you've probably already done a bit. And secondly, just start exploring, I would. So, you know, like if you are like driving somewhere and you see people walking their dogs, and you might see a footpath sign, and you might see dog walkers kind of heading into some fields or something like that, just like one day when you're running along, just like follow a dog walker, or just take that footpath sign and just have a look in the field and see what's there. And the best thing you can do to explore without, you know, like necessarily having to get a map out or anything, is that you can just run along, and every so often turn around and take a photo of where you've come from, and then when you just run along following various footpath signs, and then when you when you get to, you know, 15 minutes or something like that, just turn around, and you can usually find your way back. And if not, just look at the photos for your reference. So that's a really easy way to do it. The other great thing you could do is talk to other people. So if there's a local running club nearby, you could talk to them. You can also look on Strava, because they do that heat map thing on Strava. So you can see where other people have gone. So you can see whether people are heading into fields and that kind of thing. There's lots of running apps you can also use for that if you haven't got Strava. You can also look at kind of vlogs and blogs, like my channel, Wild Ginger Running, we do I do the odd route, so you can have a look at where I've been. You could follow me on Strava and see where I go, but don't necessarily follow everything, because sometimes I go wrong and I accidentally go through like fields I shouldn't. So just definitely check. And the other way to do it is to actually get a map out, and I would really advise going on a basic navigation course, because that will open up a whole new range of routes. So behind me, I've got a map on my wall of my local area, and it's wallpaper that you can get. I got mine from Love Maps On. And it's really cool because I can plan new routes from my local area using this map. And you just look for the green dotted lines, which are footpaths, or pink dotted lines if it's a 1 to 50,000 map. So yeah, it's really easy. Once you know how maps work, it's very straightforward to find new trails. So that's another way of doing it. And the other thing is to book a trail race as well. You don't, I think, if you were booking a road race, you'd be like, oh my God, the training, the pacing, the watch, everything, the time. If you book a trail race, that's a really easy way to explore somewhere new. Like I was saying, that I did the Lakeland Trails races. There's so many waymarked trail races that you can do that will get you off the beaten track without you having to even plan a route or navigate. So that's a really good way to start as well. And you don't have to be good. You can just jog about at the back like I do, chatting to people. So yeah, that would be how I would get into trail running.
Cool. Yeah, you touched a lot of interesting thing, and one thing that I want to highlight is that you don't have to live in the mountains to do trail running or to call yourself a trail runner. Like, for example, I don't live in the mountains, but I consider myself a trail runner. There are people who live in a city and who don't have access to the trails, but with some creativity and you can totally be a trail runner even if you live in a city and you don't run on the trails every day. So this is I think it's really important to highlight that anybody can be a trail runner, and anybody can start from his own level, his or her own level. It's totally okay, for example, to walk and even to start with very little, like 15 minutes a day. I think one of the most useful things to approach trail running or just training in general is the importance of building a routine. So it's important to be consistent when you are approaching an activity like trail running, to do something little. Doesn't have to be necessarily every day, but on a weekly basis. It can be 2 or 3 times per week, but just be gradual and be consistent, because that's the most important thing to develop a healthy relationship with the physical exercise and also with your body.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I've just thought of another really good tip for if you're a road runner. So you say like just do it like 15 minutes a day. If you usually do your road run, say you go for like half an hour on a Tuesday, you could run for 15 minutes of that road run. You could take yourself to your local park and just practice not running on the tarmac paths, but running on the grass. Or if you don't have a park nearby, there's often grass verges on the side of your pavement. So you could, instead of always running on the tarmac, you could practice the off-road, the different terrain underfoot by running on the grass, or if there's gravel or stones, just seek out other textures underfoot and practice that way. And that way you can incorporate 5, 10, 15 minutes at a time into your road run, and train for trails that way.
Yeah, totally true. How important it is to have good gear for trail running? Like, for example, like to start trail running, we just need a pair of shoes, and I feel it's okay. But once we start going a little longer and we start exploring maybe some new trails or places that we don't know, or some more technical trails than just a city park, do you feel like it's important to have good gear and gear that is designed specifically for trail running?
Yeah, I think gear shouldn't be a barrier, but you can start trail running, especially if it's dry, in just a pair of road trainers. I mean, on dry trails around where I live, I just use road trainers. But when it gets muddy, yeah, you'll want to get some specific trail running shoes, they have a really good grip. So they're more of not necessarily a football boot underneath. You can get that level for the mountains, but just a bit more grip, like a bit more beefy than your normal trainer. And then once you really get into it, I think the next thing that most trail runners want to buy is probably both of these things at the same time. Actually, there's a small running pack. And also, I've just going on holiday this weekend, so I just packed my running pack. I thought I could hold it up and show you. But so a little running pack so that you can put snacks in, because you might want to, take a map, take some snacks and water. And then the other thing that you might want to put in there or wear is a waterproof jacket, because on trails you might be exploring a little bit more open areas where the wind might be buffeting you, or you might be out for longer in more epic situations, like you might be going to a local country park and running to the top of a big hill. So you might want a waterproof jacket either to wear in bad weather or to carry in your pack just in case. So those are the first three things you'd need: the shoes, the waterproof jacket, and the little the carrying pack. And then a lot of people, once they get into it, they like to have a watch as well. Like they like to see the pace. Not that it really matters what pace you're going, but they like the distance. And some of them have navigation features on as well. So you can sort of do track back to the start, or you can do turn by turn waypoint navigation and things like that. So you can just download a route from the internet and just follow it. I don't really do that. I always just use a map because I'm old school and I was taught to map read. I think it's an important skill. So yeah, I would recommend going on a navigation course, just again, just to reiterate that. But yeah, gear wise, those are the top things that I would take for sure. Yeah.
Nice. And let's talk a little bit about guidance. How important do you think is to have someone who helps you set realistic goals and really tailor your training to the type of athlete or person you are? Because sometimes it's tempting to want to do a lot at once, but I learned myself that this often shuts off motivation and makes me feel bad when I can't keep up. So I think it's important to have someone who guides you to be able to set realistic goals that are, in a way, challenging and motivating, but at the same time achievable in a healthy way.
Yeah, I think that one of the best gifts you can give yourself is a bit of coaching and guidance. So there's lots of different levels that you could take. I mean, you could book one-to-one coaching. That's really expensive, but you'll presumably get the most out of your body that you possibly can. Not everybody has that budget. Not everyone wants that, and not everybody has the time to invest in that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I think it's really good that something like Vert.Run exists, because it seems to be a good middle ground between having this really expensive one-to-one coach or just taking a training plan out of a book. I mean, I've got training plans in my book, but they're just generic. I mean, I cannot write a training plan for everybody that reads this book, so they have to be generic. And you don't want, I mean, that's good up to a point. You can get a certain way with that, and if you want to educate yourself on sports physiology and coaching, and some people do want to do that, then there's a lot you can do with a generic training plan. You can tailor it to your needs. But if you've got something like Vert.Run, where you can invest a little bit of money and get some one-to-one kind of remote coaching and alterations and tweaks to your training plan and loads of good videos and stuff, I think that is the perfect middle ground, and the perfect thing for somebody on a budget, really. And do you know what? When you start training consistently with a plan from someone who actually knows what they're doing, that is when you're going to get the maximum from your body and the minimum chance of injury.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would. And also it makes you do stuff that you wouldn't normally do, like strength and conditioning. What runner does strength and conditioning that coaches themselves? Hardly any, I would say. And all of the elite athletes I talk to, I interview a lot of elite athletes all the time, that when I ever ask them the question, what is the one thing you wish you'd done more of, or the one thing that you would say to everybody do more of, they say strength and conditioning. So that having a coach or something that's going to give you some guidance with your running is really important, I would say.
Yeah, totally agree with that. Yeah, you touched again very important topics. One is the importance of strength and conditioning, and also I think diversifying your training. That like it doesn't have to be running all the time. I think it's very important to incorporate cross training and other aerobic activities such as hiking or cycling or swimming or skiing, or just like it can be literally any aerobic activity that is super helpful to diversifying the training. And then of course strength and conditioning, because like the goal when you start trail running, or even for an experienced trail runner, is to build a good aerobic engine and then prepare the body and make it stronger for the trails with strength and core exercises, for example. So what's your experience with cross training, and what do you think is useful to consider for someone who is getting started, who is a beginner?
Well, I'm really hoping that carrying a baby is good cross training. Because
Strength or
I'm
aerobic?
on one hip or the other hip, and I'm trying to, stir some eggs or make a flapjack, and he's helping me. So I'm hoping that carrying him and lifting him all the time is like good as a medicine ball. He is like 10 kilograms or 11 kilograms now, so it's probably really good. There's probably a lot more I could do with him, like actually lifting him, like simulating some actual exercises. But in all seriousness, the exercises that I do most for cross training with trail running is just other stuff that I like. So that's the brilliant thing about exercise. Find what you like and do it, and that will make you do it more. So I like to go mountain biking, road biking, done a bit of climbing in my time, a bit of kayaking, but mainly swimming. I really like open water swimming. I love it. It's free. Apart from the 75 quid wetsuit that I had to buy myself because I'm a wuss in the winter. But that's brilliant. If you've got a local river or can get to any open water venue, that's amazing. And other activities, hiking. Hiking is an amazing cross-training activity for running, because it's basically running but slowed down, isn't it? And it's what you do when you get a bit tired or up hills. So walking's incredible. And then there is specific exercises that you can do, like squats and lunges and press ups and pull ups and weights and resistance training and that kind of thing. And that can be super useful, especially if you live in a bit of a flat place and you can't get to the hills. That can be really useful. But just in general, doing stuff like plyometrics, jumping exercises and things like that can make you really, really strong. And it's not just training you for the actual act of running itself, which it will, but also it will help you recover faster, and it will make you less prone to injuries. So just taking the time to do like just a few minutes a day, like 10 minutes a day, or 1/2 hour to an hour session a week, however you like to do it, that's fantastic. Like one of the favorite things I like to do is like just tell yourself to do 2 squats every time you boil the kettle. If you say 2 rather than 15, you will actually do it. And then you might end up doing 5. So just little things like that, like brush your teeth doing single leg squats, or standing on one leg on a rolled up towel for a bit of balance. You don't have to buy loads of stuff. You don't have to buy weights. My favorite thing to tell people is that you can just load up your backpack with water bottles and put that on and do the squats and lunges like that. You don't have to hold weights. And it's
or just exploit your body weight,
because that's what you need to do.
Yeah, or just even exploit your body weight. For example, there is a lot of simple, easy core exercises that you can do that actually make you very strong for the trails. And here at Vert, we have, for example, good videos, and with the coaching that we offer, anyone can have access to our library or to the guidance of a coach who can help you make the most of your experience on the trails.
Yeah,
Nice.
I've done a couple of the videos. They're super simple. And the great thing is that they're only like 5 minutes long, some of them. So you just go, oh, because I've got a baby, I'm like, oh, I don't have time. But then I see one for 5 minutes and I'm like, you have time.
Yeah. And I think it's also important to mention that it's way better to even dedicate just 5 or 10 minutes and lace up your shoes or getting a short strength session rather than skipping a session. Like trail running, like many other endurance sports, it's all about consistency, and you will really see the results of your training if you are consistent rather than maybe just skip all the sessions during the week and do a lot, for example, during the weekends.
Yeah, definitely. Little and often. I definitely agree with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because also that makes you more prone to injuries, and running is definitely a sport where it's easy to pick up an injury because with the impacts we have with the terrain, and maybe someone who is getting started and get caught up running more miles week by week, it's easy to actually get injured. So it's important to be very gradual. And as we mentioned, to incorporate cross training to make sure we build a good aerobic engine, and then do good conditioning and strength exercises to make the body stronger, to be able to handle the trails, the up and downs, also the tarmac, because the tarmac is actually probably worse for your muscles and joints rather than the gravel, for example.
Yeah, definitely. It's actually harder on your body to run on the
Mm-hmm.
tarmac. It takes more calories to run on the trails because you're using different muscles all the time, but at least you don't get all those repetitive strain injuries.
Yeah, definitely. And let's talk a little bit about walking, because I mean, as trail runners, we know that walking is totally acceptable. Power walking is an amazing cardio exercise, and even the best ultra runners in the world walk and power hike during races or in training up a hill. So, like, maybe people who come from the roads think that it's not okay to walk, but it's actually 100% okay. So can you talk a little bit about like how to manage the effort between running and walking, and like, should we go by effort, should we go by feel, should we go with the heart rate? How do you do it?
Yeah, that's a really good thing to mention, because I think a lot of people see trail running and they think running, but actually trail running shouldn't be called trail running. It should be called trail running / jogging / walking / having a bit of a sit down and eating some food. So
yeah, it's just all about moving in the natural environment. It doesn't even have to be in the mountains, as we say. It can be anywhere, but it's all about moving and find the best way of moving through the natural landscape, actually.
Yeah, so
and
it
that
should be
is
called
not
trail
necessarily
moving.
walking.
Yeah,
Running.
We've just rebranded the whole of trail running into trail moving. So this is the ultimate trail moving handbook now. So yeah, so when should you walk and when should you run? So you can use your watch, and there'll be, you can get a watch with heart rate on. But that's not necessary at all. When you're a bit experienced at trail running, even when you're not actually, I would say start walking when you start to not be in control of your breath anymore. So if you're gasping for air, you could not hold a conversation whatsoever, like you couldn't even gasp a sentence out. If you're at that level, that's working too hard. Unless you're doing like a 5K or something, like unless you're doing park run where you want to be, you're going for a fast time or something. But if you're wanting to do, like 10 miles nice and leisurely, or 20 miles on the trails, if you're a bit more experienced, then you should just be kind of jogging along, and you want to be making a similar effort that you do on the flat and the downhill than you do on the uphill. So slow the cadence right down, take short steps, try not to look like all the way at the top of the hill, but give yourself kind of short goals like, oh, I'll just jog to this tree. And then if you find your breath is uncontrollable, like like this, and you couldn't chat to a friend, then, or say anything to a friend, then that is the time to walk. And when I say walk, if you're in a race situation, the guys, you know, like on the UTMB, they do walk up the hills, but they're not kind of just strolling along. They've got they're running along, and then they realize that they're getting out of breath, so they're taking their poles out, they're constructing their poles really quickly, and then they're power hiking up that hill. So they're taking probably a bit longer strides than you would if you didn't have any poles, but they are power hiking, so they're going really like quite a good speed actually up the hill. You don't have to, of course, but that's why they call that power hiking, and that's just a sexy name for walking. And even especially the pros will all do that, and they'll do that when they get to a long steep incline, or actually depending on the race, probably any incline. The shorter the race, the more you run. The longer the race, the more you walk every uphill, because you just want to conserve that energy. You don't want to waste it all in the first 10 miles of a really long race. But yeah, as a beginner, trail running is the best sport. Like as soon as you get a bit out of breath, you just start walking. Nice brisk walk, like you can lean a bit forward and have your hands on your knees and things like that. But yeah, that's when you start walking, is when you get too out of breath, which should come as a breath of fresh air to everybody listening.
Nice. It's very helpful tip. Yeah, it's important to understand that walking may be the most efficient way of moving in the mountains. Sometimes, for example, running up a hill requires a lot of strength and a lot of energy that you can save if you walk, for example. So that's why even, you know, elite runners actually walk or power walk during races, and sometimes even during short races, because it's more efficient. So it's definitely okay to walk, especially if you're a beginner. And one of the most important thing that I feel it's important to mention is that walking up a hill allows you to keep your effort constant, like the same effort that you're doing when you're running, for example, on the flat. You can keep it when you go up a hill, but of course, if you run, it's going to be out of control. But if you walk, you can keep still a good speed with the same type of effort that you're doing when you are on the flat.
Yeah, totally.
Cool.
That is a good explanation.
Mm-hmm. Nice. So going back a little bit and talking about your experience. So we mentioned that you were actually running through pregnancy. How was your experience with training at that time?
Oh, yes. That is a good question. So I was able to keep running quite a long time through my pregnancy, which I was really, looking back, I'm really pleased about, because I've actually run less after giving birth than I have when I was pregnant. So I'm quite proud of that. It's hard running when you're pregnant because, well, for me it was hard because the baby just presses on everything, so you can't breathe as well, and you need the loo. Like towards the end, I like needed the loo every mile, or or whatever came first, every 10 minutes. So it's quite hard, especially if you live in a city. You can't just keep popping behind a bush. I did actually pop behind a bush like near someone's house once, and like my whole running club was there waiting for me. And I was like, I'm just gonna go behind this bush. And I would plan the running, because I'm a running leader with my club. I would plan the routes around pubs. This was pre-COVID, or was it the middle of COVID? There was at some point that we were allowed to pop into pubs, and I would plan for the stops to be at pubs so that I could pop in for the loo. So you might have to sort of reconfigure some of your runs when you're pregnant because of that. One of my friends actually ran fine throughout her pregnancy. She was still doing 8-minute miles. She's like a bit of a pro. She's like probably capable of a sub 3 hour marathon, that kind of runner. So she was fine, and she ran all the way through pregnancy, was still doing 8-minute miles, and then 2 weeks after she gave birth, she was back running again, and she runs at like 6 o'clock every morning, just like before the baby wakes up, and she's amazing. But then a lot of my other friends just gave up in the second trimester because it just became too painful, too uncomfortable. You can get these kind of like sling things that go round, like a support band. I didn't find that they helped at all. In fact, sometimes they made it worse. They were quite warm though, and it was winter, so that was nice. And yeah, some people gave up. So it totally depends on you and your pregnancy and how it's going. And it's really hard not to compare yourself to anyone else.
Yeah.
Like I'm quite a sort of a confident, outgoing person, but even me, I was like, oh, they're doing that, why can't I do that? Oh, and I would get like, not jealous, but just envious of what other people were capable of. Like one of my friends on Instagram, she was posting like images of her with a big bump like on the top of a mountain in the Lake District, and I was like, oh, I couldn't do that. Towards the end I could only walk for like 3 miles without things hurting. I did a couple of 5-mile walks and 5-mile runs, and just it was really painful down there. I thought that I was going to labor at one point, and I thought, oh my god, if this is labor pains, it's going to be horrendous. Actually labor was a lot worse than that. But yeah, it was really hard to keep going. But if you can, do run through pregnancy, because once you give birth you might not have a lot of chance to run, depending on how much your baby sleeps and how your body is. But walking, I found that I went for a walk pretty much every day. I would do 3 to 5 miles every single day, and that's, you know, anything from half an hour to an hour of walking. So I would just keep active throughout the pregnancy. I think it really, really helps both body and mind.
Nice. And also after giving birth, how did you restart training? Like how long after you gave birth? And can you give us even some numbers, for example, of what you were doing when you restarted?
Yeah, sure. So my friend, when she went back after 2 weeks and she started running again. So after 2 weeks after giving birth, I decided to do a little jog with the pram and completely weed myself. So that was not good, and that just showed me how my pelvic floor just wasn't ready for running yet. So I was doing a lot of walking, because it's the thumping action that puts the pressure on the pelvic floor. So that's why it's not good to you think, oh, maybe it will strengthen it up to just keep doing it, but it doesn't really work like that. In the end, I ended up going for one of those, like a mummy MOT thing, where I got investigated and I had some kind of mild prolapse. So I had to do some exercises to strengthen it up down there. And it kind of sorted it out itself in the end, but I did a lot of walking to start off with. So again, I was doing my 3 to 5 miles most days, especially with like the baby napping. There's a lot you can do with a pram, just walking around. I did like probably more walking than ever in my life. And then when the baby gets to about 6 months old, you can get a running buggy. So you can run while they nap, or, you know, either side of a nap, that kind of thing. So I was doing a lot of walking every day just to keep sane and fit. And then I would keep trying every so often, every few weeks or so, I'd break into a bit of a jog, and then I'd be like, oh, no, not ready yet. And then 3 months, everyone says, oh yeah, don't run for 3 months, because then after 3 months, you're magically fine. I wasn't. And I was like, oh, that's really rubbish, because I could see people, you know, hiking up mountains with their babies, doing their first race again, or, you know, like amazing people like Sophie Power, who did the UTMB 3 months after giving birth to her third child. That's a 100-mile race through the mountains in Chamonix. Like, I have no idea how she did that. Like, pelvic floor alone, how on earth did she train for that, have time to train for that with 3 kids, and the energy with the sleep deprivation? I have no idea. She's an amazing woman. So there was no way I was doing anything like that. But I got to month 4, and after my mummy MOT and everything, I just miraculously, something must have like healed up in my body or something, but I suddenly was just able to run around the garden 10 times without weeing myself. And I was so happy that day. I did a vlog post about it, and I'm going to edit them all together and make a film about it soon.
Cool.
Actually, you've just reminded me, I must write that down. And so I ran around the garden 10 times. I was like, don't get too excited, Claire. So the following day I ran around the garden 20 times. My garden's not that big, so it wasn't that far, but it was like, you know, like 5 or 10 minutes of running. So I literally built up from 5 minutes to 10 minutes to around the block for 15 minutes to then 20 minutes to then, whilst I was out walking, I would jog a proportion of it and then not. And I found every time I jogged downhill, that was when the pelvic floor wasn't strong enough again. So I would walk the downhills and run the uphills conversely. So just to get fit. And Jasmine Paris, she's an amazing ultra runner who has the spine race record, 268 miles along the Pennine Way. She told me to do some like uphills, both in pregnancy and afterwards, actually, because the uphills, they're slower, but you put more effort in, and it's not so much impact on the joints and the pelvic floor. So you could do a bit of uphill running as well. So I just graduated really slowly until I could run for half an hour. And then, yeah, I seemed to get stronger and stronger. So I would just try to go out 3 times a week, if possible, illness permitting, tiredness permitting. It was a bit off and on, a bit hit and miss, but I did keep walking pretty much every day, 3 to 5 miles, sometimes 6 miles. But yeah, I would do 5 to 10K walking every single day. That kind of keeps your roar in. And then now that he's a year old, I just feel like I'm getting my life back. He sleeps through the night, thank God. He sleeps for 10 hours most nights, every night pretty much, touch wood. Oh, he's going to wake up tonight, isn't he now? And so I can now go to running club quite reliably, and I can train now, but I just keep getting ill. So that's the thing now, getting ill. And you know, if I stay up too late myself and he wakes up at 6, then I get a bit tired as well. So there's that as well. And sometimes, you know, he's a year old and I'm, you know, coming back to work now, so I've got like other things to juggle, so it's hard to get out. But I really should do more of those 5-minute strength and conditioning exercises that you guys have online, because I really it's just motivating yourself, isn't it, to actually do it. I need to read my book more.
Yeah, you feel like you can actually complete something. So challenge after challenge, you're on your way to complete recovery, and hopefully you will be able to enjoy training more and more.
Getting there. But I'd probably say maybe book a couple of races towards the end of the year. I booked a race. I did the Rutland Water night run. That was a 10K. And I actually really surprised myself because I hadn't trained specifically for it or anything. And I felt really strong and I really enjoyed it. And I was really happy running around that. But now booking a race is a bit hit and miss because he started nursery. I'm just a bit like, oh, will I have a cold on that day? But I think I might do a race in March. I might train for a 10K in Bourne Woods. So I might do that in March. So yeah, have some goals, I would say.
Cool. Thank you for giving us some context. And I feel it's super important to understand that it's okay to start even from 5 minutes of running or even less, 15 minutes of walking, to run every other day and to alternate running and walking when you are restarting. Do you feel the same can apply, for example, for someone who is is recovering from a big injury or who has taken some time away from running, even can be, a few months up to maybe years, like those people who are restarting running, how should they manage their training?
Oh, restarting running. Well, it depends what the injury is. But I would always get a good diagnosis from a proper physio, not just physio Google or Facebook, because other people don't necessarily know what they're talking about. So I would follow the physio guidelines. I know you get a list of exercises from them that no one ever does, but if you can try and do them, then that is most beneficial. And then, just don't be scared to take it slow. I think everybody wants, including me, I just want to get back into it. I want to run 10 miles. I want to sign up for a marathon on the trails. Just take it slowly and
give yourself time. It's super
Yeah, give
important.
yourself time and do a lot of walking. Walking's better than running, to be honest, for like lack of injury. You still get to the same beautiful places. It's just kind of slower. So I would say go walking in your trail running gear. Or your running gear. Just go walking, and then if you feel like running, run. And then if you don't, then just do the walk. And that's a great way to keep yourself motivated and keep going out. And if you say to yourself, I'm just going for a walk, then doing the run is a bonus. So yeah, I would just do a lot of walking, especially if you're injured. Just take it really slowly. Even 1 minute of running, it's and and be grateful as well, because I mean there's a lot of people who can't even walk, people who have trodden on landmines. I met this amazing guy at the National Running Show recently who had both his legs amputated just below the knee, and he's done the Marathon des Sables. So I just think, okay, yes, I had a baby, or okay, you might be injured, but you've got all 4 limbs, and presumably like your sight, your hearing, like there's so many things that you do have, so focus on the good things as well. And try to I know it's hard, but be grateful for being able to just get outside and walk.
So to close our conversation, do we want to mention how warm and usually welcoming the trail running community is? Because like I feel a big reason to start trail running is for its amazing community. Like I really met some amazing people through trail running, and also it gives you the possibility to travel to beautiful places, to know people from very different backgrounds from all over the world. It doesn't have to be at races, because not every trail runner has to compete. Competing is not for everyone, but I feel like trail running is a great way to discover places, people, experiences, and it's just a great community. What's your experience been with this?
Yeah, exactly the same. I think trail running and ultra running as well, the big brother sister of trail running, is just one of the most friendly communities you can join. I mean, there's people of all different shapes, sizes, ages, colors, backgrounds, ability levels, and everybody seems to get along well. I mean, it's one of the
there is room for everyone. I feel like people are welcoming and they're usually friendly. There is basically you don't have to be an elite athlete to compete or to enjoy the trails. It can be for any level, for anyone who is just willing to put himself or herself out there and just enjoy the experience.
Yeah, and it's one of the only sports where you can toe the start line with the elite athletes.
Yeah,
like
that's
you
really
can't do that
cool.
in road running or cycling or swimming. Like you're there, you can be milling around with the elites. It's incredible for that. And everybody's very helpful, and if somebody stops on the trail, somebody will help them, or there's a real camaraderie.
It's also
and,
I feel like it's
lovely.
also like totally okay to reach out for help, because sometimes we struggle, sometimes we lose motivation. I found that it's way easier to get outside and train with someone, for example. So it's totally okay to reach out for help, to reach out to people, to ask for tips, advice, and just information. And everyone is usually very open, very welcoming. So like the community is great. I encourage everyone to experience it. And even here with Vert, we're really building a really cool community. We have, for example, a community on the app where people are sharing their experiences, their races, their training, even their questions, fears, expectations, like everything that we live through our journey in running.
Yeah, it is incredible. I would encourage everybody to take up trail running. If you've got legs, then do it.
Yeah.
Or even if you haven't.
Thank you. Last thing that I want to mention, you actually wrote a really cool training plan for Vert, who has over 500 signups. It's a 10K plan for people who want to start their, with trail running and maybe do their first 10K trail race. So can you talk a little bit about the idea behind it and how it's structured and who is it for?
Wow, the training plan is actually stolen from my book. So it's a little sneak preview of the Ultimate Trail Running Handbook. And so it's designed for people who might have done the Couch to 5K program,
Okay.
that you can find like on the NHS app. And so it's taking those people and like, so you can run 5K now. So now maybe you want to run a little bit further and maybe you want to run off-road. So it's designed for those people. So it takes you very gently from road running to trail running. I think there's about 3 runs a week, and there's a strength session, and there's some yoga and stretching in that as well. And there's also little tips, like every week there's, oh, watch this video on Wild Ginger Running, or, oh, have a look at this. This is useful about some gear that you might want to think about right now, or this is a nutrition tip right now. So it's got all the videos as well that come as a package with it. And there's also warm-ups that you can do as well, and cool downs. So it really is an all-encompassing little training program that's fantastic for anybody who wants to just start trail running. So I'm so excited that there's 500 signups. That's great.
Yeah, it's going really well. And we're super excited about it. Actually, this week we're also launching another training plan for people who are getting started with running. That is called the Couch to Trail training plan. And it's literally for people who are truly starting from zero. So people who are totally new to trail running. And it's all about, as I mentioned, building the consistency, and the idea of training is actually mainly walking based. So for people who have literally zero experience with running, but it's good to, to build the habit, to keep the motivation of training, and to start building something for maybe what is next. That can be a 5K plan, a 10K plan, or even, become an ultra runner. That is maybe the goal of someone who has already some experience in running. Thank you very much for your time, Claire. And I really hope you can restart training more and more soon, and that you feel better and better after, pretty much 1 year of on and off, and with challenges and some colds and other difficulties. But I really hope you get better. And yeah, I feel like it was a very nice conversation, because, for example, as an elite runner, I always tend to see trail running as a place for experienced athlete, and we're always caught up about talking about workouts and long races and miles and times and records and stuff. But it's important to realize that there are a lot of people who want to get started in trail running, and there might be not a whole lot of information that is easy to access and is available to everyone. So I hope this contributes to, to inspire someone and to get even one person out on the trails, which is one of our goals with Vert, and I think also of Wild Ginger Running.
Yeah, well, it's great that Vert.Run's doing this, and also, yeah, there's loads of information about trail running on my channel. So I get a lot of beginner trail runners and beginner ultra runners coming to Wild Ginger Running YouTube channel. So,
yeah, we totally encourage people to check it out. There is I was also taking a look at it before this podcast. So much good content, so much nice videos and inspiration. So check it out.
And There's a lot there, but if you have a query, just Google your query. So type it into Google and then put wild ginger after it, and that will bring up anything that I've done on the topic. So that's probably the best way for people to search if they're searching for a certain thing. Yeah. Oh, and to buy the book as well, because it's like Introduction to Trail Running. So that's really helpful too. Nice. Oh, and I run training camps as well in the UK. So it's all on my website.
Cool. Yeah, we mentioned it in the introduction, but thank you for bringing it up again. All right. Thank you for joining us today.
That's great.
And keep enjoying the trails. Or if you're new to the sport, get out because it's a lot of fun.
Happy trails, everybody.
Happy trails. Bye.
Bye.